us. Stress, emotions, relationships, pressure at work, you name it, all of this travels through these systems and it affects how we feel, not just physically, but mentally as well. But what happens when the system becomes overloaded is the question this evening. Tonight, we explore how these two systems, that is the internal as well as the nervous system, are essentially a great part of our health and how these can be restored to restore our health as a whole human being. And I say as a whole human being because I don't think I've ever looked at this area, this facet of health, to be able to restore health to my being in totality. Joining us this evening is Dr. Nicholas Neaves, a homeopath and narrative therapist, couples counselor, and author with over 25 years of experience with helping people restore emotional and physical balance. Dr. Neaves, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to African Diaries.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here, and what an interesting subject.
It is. Let's start off by giving definition. I don't know what an internal system is. I know the nervous system, and I to an extent thought that there was a central nervous system. So what's the internal and what's the nervous?
Yeah. So when we were talking about the internal system, we do actually mean the nervous system. It's how we interpret the external environment and what we do with that then internally, as far as do we regulate that or do we become a little bit more dysregulated? And so this is all happening within, split seconds. It happens so fast that we literally, where we're sitting right now, for example, we are scanning our environment 4 times every second for safety. Your nervous system is doing that for you, and that's an internal dynamic, and that's run by your central nervous system, which is made up of your parasympathetic nervous system and your normal sort of stress sympathetic nervous system. And so we've got different parts of the nervous system here, but it all runs the internal dynamic and the environment in how we ultimately feel, because of how we're interpreting the environment on the exterior.
Sure. I understand that these experiences, feelings, emotions store some level of energy within our beings. Where does that go to?
Well, so I think what we're looking at is the ability to be able to go through life on an average day, let's just say, for example. And so when you're driving to work, that's a normal kind of day. Nothing really happens that's out of the ordinary. And so that doesn't really make you feel too much. It's almost done automatically. You're changing the gears, changing the clutch, etc., getting to work, all okay. It's generally when something either very high on the negative emotion side happens or something very high on the positive emotion side happens. In other words, it's out of the normal patterning in your normal day-to-day life that starts to really arouse the nervous system into either a painful response or a threat response or something that we would call maybe an infatuated or pleasurable response, right? And so those type of experiences stand out because they're outside the normal patterning that our brain is generally picking up day to day. And so we create a memory around it. And remember, we're here to survive, right? Our bodies generally have the brain and the nervous system not only to enjoy pleasure, but it's certainly to help us move away from that which is painful. And so we are threat detecting machines, right? We're detecting, as I say, every couple of seconds there for danger. And it's important that we respond to that. And those are then the stress signals in the body. And so you will experience that internal environment becoming more stressed. It will raise your heart rate, your pulse rate, your breathing will increase. And you'll literally start to actually feel yourself stressing if something were to happen. So, for example, if you had to have a loud bang go off right now, you would have a lot of adrenaline circulating in your system, and then cortisol will kick in. And so your heart rate will go up until you figure out what that loud noise was about. You're going to feel under threat. When you find out that maybe something just fell out of the bookshelf onto the floor, then it's like, okay, I've got the answer. And so now I know it was just a book that fell, everything is fine. The problem with stress is that, not every day is it a book falling on the floor. And sometimes with stress, we don't get to know what is causing the stress. We don't get to the answer or the solution or the completion of the stress. It could be a long-term relationship. It's not like we can just get rid of our mom-in-laws, right? They're there. It's a daily, type of experience. And so that's how we process and manage. And also through the narrative therapy lens, it's very much how we deal with how we are narrating the internal story about that person, event, or experience
Yeah.
that dictates very much how we are internally relating as far as stress and our nervous systems are concerned.
Sure. I think quite a bit was said there. I'm rather
Yeah.
curious about how energy plays its role in the
Right.
discussion we just had. I mean, you refer to energy as the currency of presence.
Mm.
Talk to me about how that
Yeah.
factors in.
Yeah. So I like to just, remind my clients often that we are finite beings. We only have so much time and also then energy throughout a normal day. We're not these bionic creatures that just have, I mean, it may come one day, right, with AI and technology and things like that, where we
Yeah.
literally end up being cyborgy and we have all these extra elements of energy. But for now, we're human beings, and we get tired, right? And
Yeah.
and we get tired because obviously we get through our day and we are burning up energy. And what burns up an extremely amount of energy is emotional experiences and stress. And so it chews into our emotional bandwidth or our emotional currency that we have. So let's say you start the day with 100 credits of energy. If you have a very stressful day, you're going to have maybe 10% left at the end of the day of those energy currents inside of your body, right? And so
Yeah.
you only have 10% availability, aren't you? And now if you're in a relationship or if you have a family and children, etc., you're flat. It's literally your battery being flat. And so you don't have the energy. If you don't have the energy, it's very difficult to be focused and concentrated and tune into your relationships and be present with them.
Yeah.
Your body's going to be in a response of needing to replenish, to regulate, and to certainly come back online again, meaning it needs to have a lot more energy inside of itself. And a lot of us take that by having space, or we do things to obviously naturally avoid relationships that we can actually get that energy back. But so energy is the currency of presence, because when you have high energy and you're feeling good and you are charged up, you generally can tune into somebody and be there empathetically and validating and really listen to them.
I'm rather curious. I think we've tilted
Mm.
toward the negative end of experiences. Is
Yeah.
it possible for you to experience a positive and still be depleted at the end of the day?
Absolutely. In anything that takes you out of that harmonious space, the body has something called homeostasis inside of it, and homeostasis means the body's constantly trying to seek balance. And so, anytime we are elated or anytime we are depressed, it will chew up energy, because elation is also an excitation of the nervous system. It also requires a bit of adrenaline, glucose, and these type of things, because it's like, wow, yeah, we're excited, right? And that's
Yeah.
burning up energy. And the same thing with being depressed. It actually chews up a lot of energy, because you're in that defensive posture, you're in your own shell, you're feeling really quite down. And so it's, I guess that's where meditation comes in, prayer comes in, all these different philosophies to try and help center ourselves and find that balance, and ultimately be calm inside and not be too elated or too depressed, and
Sure.
not let life dictate to us too much as to which one of those moods we should be in. And often, when we are down, we want to be up, right? And that's unfortunately a big thing that's marketed out there. And it's this go 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 industry of, you can't be down, you can't be sad, you got to pick yourself up and go go go. And that's, in my opinion, very unhealthy, because the idea is it's okay to be sad because soon you're going to be happy. It's okay to be down because you'll be up. We all have those fluctuations. What's important is not to be able to take that too personally, and just to be able to love yourself and have self-compassion when you're down, but at the same time, have the self-compassion for when you are also elated and happy about something. Because life tends to balance us out like that, right? And often when we are elated, something will happen to bring us down. I often remember with my late wife, I used to come home from work and I used to help so many people and I was so elated and I felt so fantastic. And I'd walk through the front door and the first thing she'd say to me is, "Where's the bread and the milk? Why have you forgotten that?" And so I was all elated and she brought me straight back down to earth by saying I was distracted by being in my elation and feeling good about myself to the extent that I actually forgot to be present with her and remember what she asked me to bring home. And so life does that, right? And it balances us out. So focus and concentration it's at its peak in that flow state when we are not too elated or depressed, but we're just flowing and we're really present and we really enjoying ourselves. It often reminds me of when we are little children and we're just playing. We lose track of time because we're just loving what we're doing so much. And that's a far healthier space to get to, is be in that loving, flowing state rather than waiting for that high and trying to avoid that low. That can be exhausting. And sadly, most of us are on that hamster wheel.
Sure. The voice there of Dr. Nicholas Neaves joining us this evening, a homeopath, narrative therapist, couples counselor, and author. And in all these spheres and so much more, he's spent over 25 years helping people restore emotional and physical balance. Today, we are talking about the internal system, also noted as the nervous system, and essentially understanding how we can better the state of this system so that every part of you is pieced together well. If you've got questions, I want to hear from you this evening. Do find us on WhatsApp, +278 3288 6684.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, says the surge to stronger external fundamentals and a series of policy reforms have helped restore confidence in the currency market. He noted that the improvement reflects increased foreign exchange inflows, more effective reserves management, and a renewed capacity to meet external obligations.
The larger foreign reserves is super good for considering the number of volume of foreign transactions that is being done by Nigeria. So it's a good indication. A second one is that it also gives the country an opportunity to be able to access the foreign reserves when they need it for maybe urgent, maybe infrastructural or any kind of developmental project.
Dennis O'Shea, a certified financial modeling and valuation analyst.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. African Diaries, weekdays, 10 till midnight.
38 minutes after 11 p.m. Central Africa time, we are still in conversation with Dr. Nicholas Neaves, a homeopath, narrative therapist, couples counselor, and author. And we are looking at the internal or the nervous system and trying to understand that a bit better so that we know how to navigate the space of healing. What's interesting to me is that balancing the system can balance your overall health. And that's what I want to get into. So think of those headaches that won't go away, that stomach that suddenly feels off, those sleepless nights, the low energy, the constant fatigue. Dr. Neaves is here to help us get onto the right track. Now, Doctor, you ended off by saying that we are unfortunately on this very interesting hamster wheel where we are chasing extreme highs, avoiding lows at all costs, and that's creating this pendulum experience that isn't good for the body. What is, and I say this not for your nervous system, but for Shayla's lived experience, what is the standard experience that I'm supposed to be striving for? If not that dopamine effect that I get on social media when someone says my picture's cute, you know?
Yeah, I would certainly say a good place to get to would be to, well, we can start with a few adjectives here, right, and move into a space here that would be perhaps beneficial for our listeners to hear, and that is, firstly, not to create these crazy false expectations of being in this blissful state all the time, right, but it's certainly important as we spoke last time, to just be able to self-reflect upon yourself and firstly understand what the internal state is. What are you feeling? Where is your nervous system in any given moment? And I think that skill in anybody is far more important ultimately as to how you are feeling consistently, if that makes sense, because it's impossible to stay happy all the time. It's impossible to stay joyful all the time. But overall, I think a person can certainly on that spectrum there be veering more towards an optimism and a hope and a faithful sort of state of anticipation and excitement. I like to help my clients move in that direction, where it's a healthy gratitude for where they are, but with an added anticipation and excitement for what's next. I think that would probably define a really healthy place and state to be in on a consistent basis, is that I've made peace with as much as I can, and I therefore have gratitude for what life has brought me and where I am. And even beyond that, I am in an anticipatory state of being excited for what's next. And I think that would be wonderful. It's just, being in that space is tough because life does happen. It's very unpredictable. In any given moment, something can happen.
Yeah.
So there's the skill with the unpredictability of life is the skill and the tool is, can I still stay present with life enough despite the bad news, despite the negativity, and still find that center and still find that gratitude for life as much as possible. And therefore still anticipate things despite, what we see in the world at the moment. So gratitude and anticipation are two good states to be in.
Let's talk about the effects of stress, of cortisol, and all these other hormones that reflect negative experiences in our body. Because I want us to get to a place where we understand how we heal ourselves, how the headache that's been bothering me for the past 2 weeks can find some level of calm because I balanced this nervous system. So let's talk about the hormones first.
Yeah. Well, so as we were saying earlier, if you are in a peaceful state, what you'll notice is that within another 20 or 30 minutes or whatever time frame, if you just wait long enough, you will be stressed soon enough again. You could be sitting in paradise, but if your mind is becoming full of thoughts that are full of negative associations, you're going to start to create a stressful environment inside yourself because your physiology is interesting. Your thoughts and how you perceive your reality is what creates the hormonal shifts inside your body. Okay, and so again, if you're in a traumatic moment or a loud noise goes off or whatever it is, something that happens very quickly that's outside your control and it's not part of your thinking process, you will have a very natural stress hormonal response of adrenaline and then cortisol kicking in a little bit later that will naturally help you to have the adrenaline to get through whatever it is that you're getting through. That's normal and healthy. And it can get you out of very difficult situations. I mean, we've heard of people climbing out of cars from the most horrendous car accidents or lifting up cars. That's the hormone adrenaline that kicks in. The problem is after that, if that trauma is not dealt with properly, then cortisol levels stay high because now you see we're always anticipating that negative thing happening again, and we're afraid of what's happened because it was so painful. And so we're in a chronic state of high cortisol, of stress. And that's a major problem. And that's where most people find themselves, is that they are in a chronic cortisol high because life is continually quite traumatic for them. And so that cortisol at that level can obviously deplete a bit of the endocrine system. It does stimulate glucose into the system as well. What we find often happens is it creates a lot of inflammatory conditions. It creates a lot of oxidative damage. The body just is not designed to sustain that level of cortisol and stress inside of it. At some point, we should be able to get back to a healthier state. But as I say, life is so demanding, those stress levels just stay up, right? And so it's a bit like rust in your car or on your fridge. Stress does that. Stress ultimately rusts you away and it oxidizes your system, meaning it breaks it breaks you down more than you have time to rebuild yourself because you're stressed. You're not in that excited gratitude state. You're in a stressed state, anticipating negative things. And so your body's actually breaking down more than what it's building up. And so you age quicker. You welcome in more chronic diseases sooner in your life. And unfortunately, it is a destructive health pathway to be in that stress state because of the hormonal influx and what those hormones do to your system. And so we want to aim more for the oxytocins and the serotonins and dopamine in a healthy way as well. Those hormones generally tend to keep us bonded and keep us happy, and certainly in a more healthy homeostatic state inside the body. And those things we get by laughing, right? And having that joy and having good, healthy relationships where we can look someone in the eye and bond with them and be vulnerable and feel the oxytocin and feel the serotonin of the happiness. Those are far better hormones to nurture. And so, yeah, it's my vision and hope that one day, we can somehow do that more of the time. But sadly, as we've said, most people are running on that hormonal high of stress, sadly.
Sure. Let's find out, what are the organs that are most affected by these hormones that are then fluctuating and putting us in this constant state of distress?
Yeah. So what generally happens is because the thoughts and the feelings create that fear or that stress inside that part of your system, it stimulates, as we've said, the adrenaline and the cortisol. And so the stimulus on those glands ultimately fatigues those glands, whether that's the adrenal gland, the pancreas for sugar, the thyroid gland, the pituitary gland in your brain. And so those glands also perform other functions in the body, many functions like sugar metabolism, water balance, many other factors in the body. And so when the endocrine glands start to fatigue, we get these other more metabolic chronic issues developing. And so you start to see metabolic syndromes developing. You get lowering of thyroid hormones, you get pituitary issues. And there's a multitude of cancers that can impact these endocrine systems as well. And so sadly, you get the after effects or the collateral damage of a fatigued endocrine system showing up. Sure. And then long term, what you'll find is because of the blood pathways carrying all these hormones, you'll find that the flow system, which is your blood circulatory system, obviously becomes impacted, and then you welcome in cardiovascular threat, whether that's at the peripheral level, meaning the extremities of the hands or legs, or literally the heart itself or the brain. And so you'll often find it takes us into the territory of strokes, heart attacks, other sort of hemorrhagic sort of conditions, bleeding conditions and things like that, where the eyes can be damaged, the feet obviously can be damaged, the libido is impacted, etc. So stress basically rusts the system and it slows the system down completely. And then we just, we don't have that reparative quality because we don't have those more joyful sort of experiences. And not only joyful experiences, but also restful experiences. People don't rest properly. And one of the biggest things that we just address is sleep problems. If you just get your sleep right, it has a massive impact on your immunity and your overall health. It's just being able to sleep properly. And sadly, many people don't do that so well.
Sure. Dr. Neaves, we are time pressed, unfortunately, and we're going to need to cap it here for now. But you have said quite a mouthful. I'm going to try and squeeze in one question. For somebody who's listening and they're saying, I've heard everything that describes me, but I haven't heard a solution. What's the one thing that they can tangibly begin to practice now that can change and turn the tide?
Right. I would say what they should do is they should just get their sleep in a better balance as best and as quickly as possible. I say to my clients, exhaust yourselves, stay up till 12 o'clock, but then get a good 5 hours sleep from 12 to 5. the worst thing is interrupted sleep, or falling asleep and then waking up, or not being able to fall asleep and you're tossing and you're turning. That's a lot worse for you than having a good 5 hours of deep theta wave sleeping. So I would say to people, focus on your sleep. Try and wake up with energy. Right, that's a good indicator that you wake up with a generally positive mood. You've got energy. Aim for that for starters. That's the baseline. If you're not sleeping well, you can take supplements and you can do this test and that test, and you can go crazy with your health and spend thousands of rand each month. But if you're not sleeping well, you're going to waste it, because if you don't sleep well, you also have a very poor digestive system. And you'll find that 95 to 80, 98% of people actually have very poor digestive systems and poor absorption rates through their gut, So sleeping, guys, let's have a good night's sleep tonight.
I am hoping so, with everything that has been said. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you. Catch you soon. Take care, you.
Likewise,
Bye-bye.
the voice there of Dr. Nicholas Neaves, a homeopath, narrative therapist, a couples counselor, and author, 25 years plus in this field. And his was to, and still is, to help people restore emotional and physical balance. That restoring your health to a state that you would best desire. Let's get into some music. Firstly, a quick breather, then some music, then we chat tomorrow.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a